Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Luria with TMC for Seniors, and I apologize. We had a short delay here this morning, but we are happy to be here for the Inside Story with Susan Smith. Today we're going to do something a little bit different than what we've done before. We are going to have Susan sharing about her story. She is the author of a new book that she has that's come out. She's also our Women Heart Champion. And with her is Tim Bentley. Tim is a director over here at TMC Health in our communications and does our advertising. He's going to be interviewing Susan today. So welcome.
Thank you, Maya. It's good to see you. We can't really see you, but it's good to hear you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here in person today. And for those of you that are watching on YouTube or Facebook, thanks for joining in. We did some internal house cleaning things, but I'll tell you, if you're watching and inside too, Susan and I are going to have a conversation. And if you have a question, we'll take questions towards the end. So make sure and understand that we'll get to everybody's questions. If you're watching online on YouTube or Facebook, you can put a question in the comments. And Jennifer, who is our trusty producer back here, will make sure that we get that question for you. And then afterwards, Susan will be available here for questions and if you want to get a look at her new book, which we'll talk about. So thank you very much, Susan. It's nice to see you. How are you this morning?
Thank you. I'm really good. It's fun to see everyone this morning.
I know. So thank you for, every time I see Susan at TMC, I remember the very first time that she became connected to TMC. We had, how many people have seen our TMC TV commercial, perhaps? Have you seen it on TV? Well, we recruited Susan 5 years ago to be in one of our television commercials because Susan was getting a knee replacement scheduled for March of 2018. And if you've seen our dancing commercials and some other things, we wanted to highlight patients that had a good experience at TMC, and we were going to show them dancing. Well, we'll get into it in just a little bit, but Susan called me and she said, I cannot be in your TV commercial. I'm like, why not? She goes, I had a heart attack. I had a heart attack a few days ago, and I won't be able to get my knee replacement because I have to recover from this. And I said, well, listen here, Mom. Because Susan is my mom, right? And Susan is my mom, and I said, listen here, you are now going to be our heart attack patient, our cardiac patient. And it has absolutely changed TMC's perspective on how we treat patients here. It's changed my mom's life. It's changed her husband's life, Tomas, who's here, and has absolutely changed our family's life. So I'm very excited to introduce you to my mom, to Susan Smith, who's a heart attack survivor and is a women's heart champion, and is we're very glad to have her here today, as you can imagine. So
thank you.
So Mom, I'm going to call you Mom throughout this. It's okay. Tell us about that day. I remember you calling me, but tell me about what led up to that day, the day that you had a heart attack.
Oh, it's so vivid in my memory. I had a very busy life going on. I was in a second career path. I had retired from corporate world, and I was having a lot of fun putting on classes about writing memoir and all kinds of things. I belonged to many social groups and networking groups, and I went to everything. I had a lunch every day, and I loved it. My lifestyle was so busy. My calendar was full, and I loved it. And I didn't like for anything to interrupt my schedule because I was busy, very busy, taking care of everything and everybody else and just running around all day. So I was scheduled to speak at this network meeting, and I was speaking, and I had all these symptoms. I couldn't, I was short of breath. I had an ache in my collarbone. I was a little lightheaded, and I just kept speaking through this engagement, thinking, oh, it'll pass. I was so tired. I had fatigue for days. So we women, and I guess human beings, can have an excuse for everything. My fatigue I blamed on a too flat pillow or a poor meal choice for dinner. I just wasn't sleeping well. And this ache in my collarbone, I thought, I need to go get a massage. There's something hooked up there. And then my shortness of breath, I thought, well, sometimes I talk too fast and sometimes I stand up too fast. And that's probably it. So I had an excuse for everything. And I just kept going. I just kept pushing through. And I really about fainted at this meeting. I had to get a ride home because I couldn't drive. And I laid on the sofa and I was just perspiring like crazy. And I asked Dr. Google, I got out my phone and I Googled these symptoms. And you know what Dr. Google said? It was an anxiety attack. Those symptoms, if you put those in, the first thing that comes up is an anxiety attack. I thought, well, I don't know what I was anxious about, but that has to be it. So I felt better. I had dinner, I went to bed. I got up the next morning and I was going to have a busy day, busier than the one before. So I jumped out of bed. I wanted to get cleaned up before I started. I get in the shower and I'm going to wash my hair. You ladies know what that's like when you're just, and my arms didn't want to work. They just, it exhausted me. I could barely get it rinsed out. I had to get out of the shower, put on a robe and go lay down because I was short of breath and dizzy and exhausted from trying to wash my hair. That made me mad because I had this busy day and how am I going to get everything done? So I recovered and I go back in there and I have to dry my hair, style it. Same thing. I had much longer hair then. Same thing, blow dryer, brown brush. And my arms are up here and they're going, they don't want to raise up. They're just heavy as heck. And I'm short of breath again. I had to go lay down again. And if I could have stomped my foot laying down, I would have, but I said, this is unacceptable. I can't be laying down. It's not even 8 o'clock. I have too much to do. So I got up, I got dressed, I went to the grocery store because I had to buy things because I was having a class the next morning. I had to buy snacks for my students. I went to Bash's. I knew exactly what I wanted. I get the fruit and the cheese tray, and I'm going to get the gourmet cookies. I'm in the cookie aisle. And I reach out, and I get a package of those fancy ones in the white bag, and it fell on the floor. It fell on the floor. So I start to go down, and I pick it up. And I get about this far. And I thought, if I lean all the way over, I'm going to faint. And I thought, if I faint in the cookie aisle in Bashas', they're going to call the paramedics, and they're going to call 911, and they're going to come and get me, and take me to the emergency room, and I can't do that. I have too much to do. I got to go. Left the cookies there, checked out, driving home. You see how, it sounds really foolish now, but it's exactly what I did. So I'm driving. When I tried to put my groceries in the car, my legs weren't moving very well. So I realized I'm driving home. I said, something's not right. So I called my primary care doctor. Mm-hmm. And then I'll go talk.
You can talk all you want.
So I call and the receptionist answers and she said, I am sorry, but he's out of town. I go, well, who's covering for him? Who can I see? Because I got to get in and I got to get the one. She said, well, it sounds like you should call your cardiologist or go to the emergency room. I said, I can't go to the emergency room. I have too much to do. Her words haunt me to this day. And she said, you can't do anything if you're dead.
Let's talk about that real quick.
Okay, let's talk about that.
So I hear that you're busy and you're busy taking care of other people and you are involved and engaged. And I'll tell you, my mom is, she was a successful banker, real estate banker. She entered the workforce. She broke many, many glass ceilings and she was driven and motivated. And so this is my mom's life, Susan's life. But let's talk about that culture, especially for women, that allows you to downplay your own health and to downplay and to really kind of push away those warning signs. Talk about that culture growing, not necessarily growing up, but that encourages women and really puts women in that position to downplay their health.
I believe that ever since I was a young woman, I felt motivated and pushed to do more and to work harder and do extra things. And do you remember that commercial from long ago? I'm a woman. I can earn the bacon and fry it up in a pan and do all the things. And that was the superwoman syndrome. And I had it bad. But I know many women, and maybe you do too, or maybe you are one, that love busyness. And we learned how to do it at an early age. We are rewarded for it. Would you think that causes that? We're rewarded for being busy because we are accomplishing things. And when we're busy, that means I can take care of you, I can talk to you and make sure that you're okay. And then I'll go on and to the next person or the next thing, and I'll take care of it. We're caretakers, we're fixers. We can do it all.
So when the nurse says you can't do anything if you're dead, talk about that next thing. What happened then? Take us through the next couple of days after you heard that from the nurse.
I did have a cardiologist to call, and I hadn't seen him in 10 years, but I called over there and they found my file and they said, he can see you at 1 o'clock. And that was like a 2-hour wait. So my husband and I go over there and they're doing an EKG and they're looking at it and the tech's looking at it and they're squinting and the next doctor comes in and finally my cardiologist comes in and he says, Susan, you're having a heart attack. You're having a heart attack right now. You have to go to the emergency room. So I'm not going to do what I was planning on doing. So we drove to TMC, which was 4 blocks away. I went into the ER. Immediately, they whisked me into the prep room. The cardiac team arrived. I was on a gurney. I was swarmed by nurses and techs and doctors and all kinds of people helping me, asking me questions, giving me an IV, doing this, doing that. And before I knew it, I was being pushed down quickly down the hallway to the cath lab. They put in 1 stent. I came to the recovery room. The next morning, I had another heart attack in the hospital. They put in a 2nd stent. And then finally, after 4 days, I was released, but I had to wear a life vest, a defibrillator life vest for 3 months, 24/7, because my ejection fraction was too low to sustain my life without it. It was at 15 and you need to be at about 55. So I just got stopped in my tracks.
From my perspective, my mom called me. I was here on campus and my mom called me and says, I don't want you to worry, which makes you worry, right? I don't want you to worry, but my doctor says I'm having a heart attack, but I'm not. I'm just really anxious and I've been doing a lot but I'm going to go just in case. So I believe I'm like, okay. So I wandered over to the emergency room. I thought I was going to see them in the waiting room. And I'm like, where are you? And I walked in and they were they were saving her life. I'm a grateful son. We have a grateful husband. We have grateful people watching. And it was wild what they were doing. And it was real all of a sudden what was happening to you.
It was real. And actually, it was terrifying to know that, this could kill me. And these people, it was clear that's all they were there to do, was to save my life and to get me to the cath lab, which is where the life-saving procedure happens, and to get me there as quickly as possible. And I was moved there so quickly. In my book, I talk about it, how I feel like I'm in a wind tunnel. There are people pushing this gurney so fast that like this, and they get there, and there are lights and screens, and just this whole different world, and I'm afraid. But I'm here.
We're glad you're here. So what we learned on this journey up to this point, and you became very aware of it, you had downplayed these symptoms that were classic women's heart attack symptoms. But we, men and women, have different heart attacks, and the way that our culture looks at that, you realized after your heart attack that it was different. Can you tell us how heart attacks differ for men and women?
And I know that now, and I'm going to tell you so that you know it, that men have what we call the Hollywood heart attack. And that is what we see in the movies and we read in novels. And a man gets red in the face and he starts perspiring and he clutches he's holding onto his arm. And pretty soon he clutches his chest and he falls to the floor. Hollywood heart attack. In my mind, for all these years, I thought those were the symptoms. And I told you what my symptoms were. I didn't have any of those things. So listen up. In women, we're different physicality, different everything. So in a man, it's chest pain. That's like chest pain. But in a woman, it is a discomfort. And I want to be sure I say that word. I had an ache in my collarbone. That's all it was. It maybe felt like a pinch or an ache or something that you just think, if I move my shoulder, it'll go away. So it's a discomfort. I know hundreds of women that tell me what their symptom was. Jaw. Some women go to the dentist 5 times, having dental work done, trying to relieve this pain, when in reality, there's an artery not getting, it's causing that pain. Shoulder pain, neck pain, back ache, anything in a woman's upper body, which I say anything from your jaw down to your rib cage. If you have any ache or poke or anything that doesn't feel right and it's not comfortable in your upper body, not necessarily where your heart is, discomfort in your upper body, that counts. Shortness of breath is a big thing. And your heart pumps blood and life-giving oxygen to all of your organs, all over your body. And if your lungs don't get enough, then you will be short of breath. So it's classic in men and women. Lightheadedness, which is that pre-stage before you're dizzy and before you're going to faint. So if you're lightheaded and you go, oh gosh, I got to sit down, that's a symptom. So the fatigue is a big thing. And when your heart can't get that oxygen to all of your needed organs, then they can, they're not able to do their job, and you are fatigued. And it's the kind of tired it's not the kind of tired you get after exercising. You are wiped out, fatigued. So fatigue, upper body discomfort, shortness of breath, and lightheadedness.
And I think what we can do is if you're in this room and if you're online, we'll share some of that online and in our emails, the complete symptom list, because I know it's like reading a medical book. Everybody's probably in this room going, oh my gosh, do I have all these things? We want to make sure that you go and see your doctor and you go and get that baseline information and be aware of the symptoms and be aware of the things that my mom had to learn later. And we can talk a little bit more about that, but I want you to tell us in those first days and weeks when you were home, to tell us about your mental state. What was here? You had hit a wall that didn't allow you to move forward. What was your state of mind?
I was sad and I was depressed and I felt defeated. I was grateful, so grateful I was alive. So it's kind of a roller coaster. You're grateful to be alive, and then all of a sudden you're going, oh. And I was later diagnosed formally with grief. And you grieve, you are grieving your old self, your old physicality, your old body, because you're just not the same. So I was really having a tough time. And then physically, I was weak. I needed a walker. I couldn't get from one room to the next, so I had to rebuild my strength physically, and then I had to work on my mental state of mind.
Let's tell us about that. I mean, here you are, you're successful and driven, and you're you're coordinating all these events. You're busy. You talk about that busyness. Talk about coming to terms with that maybe that part of your life is going away or it's going to change. Talk about that. How did you feel?
And that's, I think that's the biggest thing that kicks you in the, when after you survive something like this. And I have friends that have survived cancer, and I've had friends that survive death and loss in their family. When you are a survivor and you live through something like this, you have to change. Your life has to be different. So my family and I knew that I had to change. And I had to change my lifestyle. This busyness had to go away. So I think you were with me that day, and we got online and we canceled every class and every group and everything that I belonged to. And I'm going to be out of commission, and don't call because I don't have the energy to talk on the phone. That was the other thing. My sister-in-law called me. I couldn't have a conversation because I wasn't healed. So I changed. Physically, I went to cardiac rehab because you have to get your heart and your body strong again. I did seek counseling. It's very common to need it, and if you can get it, please do, because you're working through grief. And then I changed my lifestyle.
But we weren't going to let Susan get out of her commercial commitment. Right? I'm like, okay, so here we go, Mom. You have agreed to be in this commercial, and we have it set for, and it was about 6 weeks after her commercial, or after her heart attack. And we invited Susan and many other people to come down and tell us their story. And if Jen can play it, here is the commercial we made that day. There we go.
Came rather fast.
She hooked me up to the EKG.
And I had to call 911 immediately.
He said, "You're having a heart attack right now."
They very quickly realized that I was in trouble.
Next thing I knew, I was in what they call a cath lab.
So I had a triple bypass surgery that Thursday. I was walking like the day after. My care at TMC was outstanding. TMC definitely, made the difference. You did a great job, mate. The rehab therapists that are there are wonderful.
I was glad I was in good hands. It was an experience I won't forget.
And in addition to that day, we took pictures of Susan, and the behind the scenes, how we make those commercials is we invite people down, and it's not just one shot. It is many, 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 many takes. And so we asked these adults who came down. We had done a very successful kids dancing commercial, and here we have adults. And here is my mom dancing. She had a heart attack 4 weeks prior. And we have this music going in the studio, and I have my mom dancing for 7 or 8 minutes. And I'm behind the camera, and I'm dancing with her, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my mother just had a heart attack, and here we are dancing. And I go, Mom, you got to sit down. So we sat her down, but we took some great pictures, and Susan has become one of our stars at TMC. I put her on a truck. We put her on billboards. And what I love the most is that she took this platform into a place of advocacy because she learned, and you just said that women have heart attacks different. And my mom cannot not be busy, right? So I said, Mom, if you want to do something, let's figure this out. And you changed your tact, and you took your energy and applied it someplace else and became an advocate for women's health with Women Heart. Tell us about that next phase.
Oh, it's so exciting. So as I said, when I was so grateful to be alive, and I woke up thinking, I have to tell every woman I know, every woman I meet, I have to tell her about this because I didn't know. And I'm a smart woman. You're a smart woman. how come we didn't know this stuff? So I committed to share this and to help women know about it. So Women Heart is a national organization run by Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Massachusetts. And every year they recruit about 50 women like me who have heart disease and there's so many kinds of heart disease to have. And they bring them to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester for 4 days of training. It's called the Leadership and Symposium. And you're trained in everything about women and heart health, as much as they can cram into you in 4 days. And then they send you back to your community you are now a Woman Heart Champion, and your job is to educate, advocate, and support women with heart disease. So my deal was speaking and writing, and I was doing that. And everywhere I went, people and the women in the room was clear they wanted a support group. And one of the things I was trained to do was to begin and run a support group for women with heart disease. But I was here by myself. I thought, how can I do that? Thank you, TMC for Seniors. I called on Maya one morning. I said, I want to do this. I need help. That day, she committed to a facility and meeting place, staff, email services, all the registrations, everything that needs to be done to get a support group up and running. Oh my gosh, all of it. And then I had a couple of other women heart sisters who were going to go through the training. They hadn't yet, and they agreed to come on and help me. And that was in 2019. And we celebrated 3 years, not too long. Anyway, we've been around now for over 3 years doing the support group, and we do it here at TMC for Seniors. And it's been a blessing to me and to others.
Well, thank you for doing that. TMC, Tucson Medical Center, is going to be 80 years old next year. And did anybody have their children at TMC? Was anybody born at TMC?
Did anybody work at TMC?
Did you work at TMC?
So
Daughter was born there.
Daughter was born there. Anybody having their baby soon at TMC? No. So that's always the question, and I'm amazed that people have a connection. They've worked there, they've had their babies there, they've been treated here. And what I love about TMC is that it's a community-based hospital, which means that our mission is to make sure that the community is healthy. So if you go to the hospital with a heart attack, they're going to give you excellent care and they're going to save your life. But some days you don't have to go to the hospital, but you might need to go to a support group, or maybe your grandchild needs a bike helmet, or your grandchild needs a baby seat, or you want to get your diabetes checked. So it's really our mission to make sure the community is healthy. We give money to events and parks and development because a healthy community is a vibrant community. And we really don't want you to come to the hospital. We really want you to stay out of the hospital. So if we can keep you healthy outside, we do that. So the support group that we offer, which Susan has started and people have taken on, is part of that mission. And I know you talked about story writing, writing stories and coaching people. You figured out you would now have an avenue to tell your story. And we talk about that phase of your life. You had been a business writer for magazines, but now you pivot a little bit to tell your story. Tell us about that.
Like I said, from the moment I opened my eyes after this heart attack and knew I was alive and I survived, I wanted to share my story. So I wrote an article for Tucson Lifestyle magazine, and they ran that like in Heart Month or something, and that was my story. That was the beginning of the book. And I thought, okay, I'll keep going. I'll write a book about this. And I stopped and I started, and finally this past year, or maybe a year, I began writing a manuscript, and I finally finished it and published it. But my book is more than my story. I realized that I can share my story and I can help you know more about heart disease and take better care of yourself. If you're a woman, if you're a man with a woman in your life, now you know more about taking better care of her. But I wanted to talk about the second part of this journey, which was me having to change and how darn hard it was. It was hard. I tell you, someone says, well, you have to change your lifestyle. Just quit doing all that stuff. Wait, that's just, and so I really had to work on it. And so the second half of my book tells my journey, how I did that, how I got through learning. I used my life experiences and how I learned to do things that bring me joy, that doesn't have to make me a crazy busy person. And so it's my story. It's not a self-help book. It's the way I did it. And people have told me that it's helped them. So that's what that is.
I have read it, and it is very good. I love the way that you look back on stages in your life that maybe were hard then, and you learn a lesson as now, Susan. And so you talk about yourself as a young teenager. You talk about your life as a 20-year-old single mom. Tell us what advice would you give to women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s that you now look back on and say, man, that what advice would you give them right now?
Oh boy, you know, those women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, and I meet them all the time. And they're in every charity, and they volunteer everywhere, and they have their regular job and their family. And I tell them, you know, are you taking care of yourself? Let's take a little time for self-care. So that's what I do it, and that's what I would tell them, is to be sure that you have figured out how to take good care of yourself. If it's a bubble bath or a shopping spree or reading a book, anything that gives you a bit of joy in your day, take good care of yourself.
And then just continuing that theme, you know, women in their 50s and 60s and 70s, what advice do you give to them?
I like to tell women in this age group, in my age group, that as we get older, and we were discussing that as we get older, how things, you know, things in your body just start to happen. So this is my mantra, and I want to pass it on to those women. You know your body best. You know everything about your body way better than your doctor. And if something isn't right, if something doesn't feel right, please get it checked out. Don't say, it'll be fine. I don't want to bother them. I sure hate to call the doctor, and if they see me, it's not, you know, don't do that. Always get it checked out.
So this book, where you talk about the finding, you know, the tools you needed to heal that you had basically given yourself as a younger woman, it really applies to anybody going through a life change. It doesn't have to be a heart attack. I mean, who is this book good for? Who would enjoy this book?
I think it's good for anyone who has had experienced or has a friend who's experienced a life-changing event. And it can be a health event like a heart attack, cancer, surgery, or it can be a personal event where you have a terrific loss in your family, anything that's traumatic, and you get through it, you survive it. That's the key, if you're a survivor. So I think anyone who's a survivor can look at this book and get something from it.
Before we start taking some questions, and maybe there's some online, but in the room for sure. You have a mantra. You've mentioned a mantra. And
I do have a mantra. And this came about in the first week after my heart attack, and I knew I had to change. And I needed to stop doing so many things. We're human beings, we're not human doings. And so someone I know in my family gave me this statement. It said, Mom, can you just be, like, chill, but can you just be? Okay. So that's my mantra, is just be. And then he's very smartly says, why don't you put a hashtag in front of that? So when I sign off online and you see me, it says hashtag just be. That's my motto.
Well, it has really taken off when people use it. And it's really a good reminder to just be quiet, be settled, be in the moment, and just be. Because, you know, life comes at us pretty fast. And I think Susan is a good example of that. So I want to open the floor to any questions, if you have a question. And do we have some online?
So I have some questions that have come in that I wanted to ask. So Susan, I know, has it been challenging to sort of revisit those moments when you were writing your book back from when you had your heart attack? Was that a challenge in order to sort of sit down and really write this?
Thank you for asking that. The challenge was getting it out there detail by detail. So I wrote about the heart attacks step by step, every single thing, so that you know what I experienced. And then going back in my lifetime when I'm writing about when I'm a teenager and when I'm a young woman, a single mom, I have remembered those details vividly, and I share that in my book. And so challenging was remembering it, Maya. I'm looking at the ceiling because she's coming at my ear.
Is there another question, Maya?
Yeah, so I know that it's been a struggle going from being so busy for your whole life, right? And learning, I guess, how to do less. What are your suggestions for somebody else that is sort of in that same predicament where really for their health, they really just need to step back a little bit and enjoy life, right?
Right. This is my advice. Just learn to say no. No is a complete sentence. And someone's going to ask you to do something because, oh my, Jennifer, you'd be so good at this. We would love it if you would do that. You'd be perfect. And we get sucked into these things. But if she says no, then they're going to find someone else. So just say no, and trust me, they'll find someone else to do it.
Thank you, Susan. And just be, right? So
Just be.
Just be. My last question is, where can we find a copy of your book? If somebody wants to, would like to get a copy, where would they find a copy that they can purchase?
Thank you for asking. It's available on Amazon, and if you're going to put out any after comments on the YouTube, I can give you the link that's direct to Amazon to order the book.
Great. And the name of the title is?
The name of the book is My Heart Attack Saved My Life, But for What?
Great. Thank you. I'm going to turn this back over for any in-person questions.
Yeah, thank you, Maya. Yeah, we have a question over here.
Did cigarettes have anything to do with your lifestyle?
Let me repeat the question for people that are watching. So the question is, things that might have affected your health along the way, and specifically smoking.
I have to say that growing up, I grew up in the 50s and the 60s. Every adult woman that I knew and idolized was a smoker. And the cigarette commercials on TV were very sexy and enticing, and I wanted to do that. A lot of my friends, we started smoking in our early adulthood, and I did. So to answer your question, cigarettes were part of my life, and I regret it to this day. I am sure that it impacted my heart health. I know it did. I also have it in my family too. Genetics plays a big role. So thank you for asking. Yes, quitting smoking is number one thing to do.
Right. Yes.
Did you have any cholesterol challenges prior to the heart attack?
Let me repeat it thank you. Another health question is, did cholesterol play a role, or did Susan know her cholesterol before this happened?
I did not have a cholesterol issue, but that's an excellent question because those of us with high cholesterol are candidates. So, but I didn't have that. But I believe the stress of my lifestyle was the main thing.
Are there any other questions for Susan? Yeah, over here.
Okay. Dealing with stress now, as opposed to the way you did it before, if something, and not being awful, but within your family took a health issue, like your husband or your son, how that would be similar to your experience, what would you do now?
So I'll repeat the question and make sure I get it right, is how would Susan and how would you give us advise us to, if something traumatic happened now, something, and now you've learned what from your heart attack, if something happened to you or to your family, how would you handle that now? How would you handle that stress now, knowing what you know?
Much better than I said.
If something happened to me now or something happened to
If there was a
A
traumatic event
experience.
in your life, how would you handle it now versus then?
Okay. I think I'm much better equipped to handle it with grace and ease because I have really trained myself to moderate this thing up here so that it doesn't shoot off in a tangent instantly and that it can remain calm. But it takes practice. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
And I like that word practice, and I know this because my mom, but her husband will say the same thing, and she's become very practiced in taking care of her health daily. I know you are a religious napper. She finds joy at her church, and she loves to go to the new mom group so she can hold babies. Is there somebody?
There's a baby in the room.
There is a baby in the room. My mom's probably gonna hold it later. But she finds and she practices finding that joy and practices, her mantra to just be. And I find, in my life, and I think that when people meet Susan, they do that same thing. They admire that, so they try to emulate that. One more question?
So I know you spoke with like a counselor afterwards to deal with the grief, but with the being mindful, do you do any meditation, mindfulness type practices?
So the question is, Susan did mention that she talked to a counselor, but does she do any regular meditation or moments of calm in your life? Do you do anything like that?
I do. Thank you for asking. It's so important. And so every morning I have a routine, and it can be short or it can be long, where I do a daily devotional, I do a meditation, I journal, it's my time where I do that. And if I miss it or if I have to cut it short, it does make a difference in my day. So yes, I do. And there are all kinds of ways to get to a meditation that's easy. There are books that on these little devices, you can go on and get an app for meditation. And they've got them as short as 2 or 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so that you can kind of ease into it and that you're not feeling like you have a huge commitment. But yes, I do.
Yes.
Do you eat a heart healthy diet and do you have an exercise program?
Do we eat a heart healthy diet? We're from Kansas. The question is, does Susan eat a heart healthy diet
And exercise.
and exercise?
Okay. Thank you for asking. I'll start with exercise first. I enjoy walking, and I believe that walking can give you some exercise every day. So I do that. And because I have bad knees, I have a hard time doing certain kinds of other exercises, but I do have a personal trainer that I see once a week, and we do a Pilates session. So yes to exercise, but I think it's always to your level and your stage. Diet. So the heart healthy diet is limits on salt, fat, all those things. And I used to do it until I had an episode where my sodium levels fell so low that the reaction was much like a heart attack. That's a whole nother story. But it sent me to the emergency room because I needed more sodium in my body. So there's one rule that I break of the heart healthy diet is that I eat a sodium-filled diet to keep my sodium levels up, and it doesn't seem to affect my heart. So that's my brief answer to you on diet.
If there's no more questions, yeah, one about here.
I have friends and family who are low income, and it appears that you were already versed in some medical
training or contacts, how could they mostly avoid a bill is what they avoid. So how would you suggest that they would seek help if they think they might be going through something like that?
Well, not to step in front, but the hospital has many such services. The question is for people that maybe are low income or are reluctant to seek healthcare or maybe don't want to get a bill, is the hospital has many programs to help people that maybe are low income. We do a lot of outreach into our community that's free. And our faith-based staff here will go out into communities and really help those people who are nervous about healthcare. It is really kind of be a reassuring to help them into that. I'll give you some resources afterwards, and we'll put them online too, so that people that maybe have that question, because it's a good question. You know, Susan talked about it, and many of us know that, you know, we avoid healthcare because we don't want bad news, you know, or maybe we think we can't afford it. You know, so if I'm not going to the doctor, that doctor can't tell me that I'm sick, right? I mean, we all do that. You know, then we go to Dr. Google and then we have everything that Dr. Google says we have, right? So it's really breaking that ice and getting people comfortable with going to the doctor, even if it's just their primary care. So I have some resources for you, okay? Are there any other questions? I want to give Susan a chance. Where can we find you? I know you're online. I know you have some places. If you want to tell us where we can find you.
Oh, thank you. I'd be glad to. I have a website that's susansmithheart.com. And on there it tells my heart story, it tells about my book. There's blogs in there. I try to do a newsletter every month that includes a heart healthy recipe, an exercise that's enjoyable for people who that helps their heart. I write stories all the time, and I put a story up, and then I put other people's blogs up that are better resources than me about women and heart health. So that newsletter is available. Just the website is susansmithheart.com.
And you're on Facebook and all the other socials?
All those platforms, yes. and I really want you to know that I'm moderating my energy, but I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram.
We have one more question in the back.
Well, I have a comment, Susan.
Yeah.
You said that after you had your heart attack, you decided, rightfully so, to slow down and not do so much like you were doing. I'm listening to you right now, and it sounds to me like your life is getting busier.
Well,
How do you
listen,
regulate that?
so the question is, Susan, you sound busier than you did before your heart attack, right? I'm gonna.
How do you regulate that?
How do you regulate that? And I tell you this is my mom, Susan, has a great team, and Tomas, her husband of 20 years, is a great moderator for my mom. I do. My mom's sisters, my mom, my brother, and people are very good. Did you take a nap today? Did you do these things? Do just one thing today. And I will tell you, and she can maybe tell you a little bit about it, but really, she has a good team that keeps her to one thing a day. So this is her one thing today, is she's doing one thing and built in all around her daily health. So good, good observation, but I want to tell you that she's got a good backstop here.
Right.
What do you tell people when they say you're so busy, Mom?
I think it's what people see. It has to do with social media and with our phones and news on 24/7. If they see you out doing something, maybe that picture of me doing something was not today. It was like the other day, but it appears that people are busy. But that's my rule. I do one thing a day, and I use this term. I manage my energy, and if I do one thing a day, an outing and something like this, which I'm loving, it's using energy, but I would just do the one thing instead of, there's another things this afternoon at 2 that I can't do. And so one thing a day, a nap every day, and that morning meditation.
And to be honest, we had something at 8 o'clock this morning that got moved, and I was grateful because that would have been 2 things today, and we would have been breaking the rules. So, well,
That's true.
Susan, Mom, Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thanks for inviting me.
If Susan's going to be available, if you're online, we will put up some information and send some emails out. You're welcome to visit with Susan after here. And Susan, if you're interested in purchasing a book or learning more about her book, she'll be here. And I think you'll sign.
I will.
Okay.
I already got one over here going. I can do
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming and thank you for being a part of the TMC family. And Jennifer, thank you for doing that. And Maya, we'll see you later. Thanks for running the show behind the scenes.
Thank you all. Thanks so much for being here today and learning all about Susan's story with the Inside Story. If you would like to join us tomorrow, we have one more class that's coming up for October, and that is going to be Genealogy 101. We have that tomorrow, Thursday, October 26th at 10 a.m. With Leslie Carney, who is a professional genealogist. If you're interested in that class, please give us a call in the office. The phone number is 520-324-1960, and we'd be happy to get you signed up for it. And watch for our next calendar. It was mailed this week, so it should be hitting your mailbox soon, and registration will be opening. So give us a call again once you receive your calendar in the mail. We've got a whole bunch of classes coming up for November. Thanks again.